How are they able to evolve so quickly? You were saying, that they're pulling weapons, equipment, and material from, kind of corrupt armories. That's one thing. Advanced, boots on the ground battlefield training, that's a different thing. Where are they just pulling people back who are seasoned, who are just going out and getting in gunfights, or are they actually sourcing some high-level individuals that are running legitimate training cells for these organizations?
So they have been outsourcing people for a very long time. Let's go back to what the Los Zetas were. The Zetas were former GAFE special forces. GAFE is the equivalent of U.S. Green Berets. That's really what they are for Mexico, okay? Originally it was 7, then it was 17, then it went up to about 35, and then ultimately somewhere in the 50 range. Before a full-time GAFE that went to work for OCL Cardenas, the head of the Gulf Cartel. So right there, that hub changed everything. And this is what I say was missed by the U.S. intelligence agencies, because the Zetas and the guys who originally came over from the GAFE, they brought two things to the cartels. They brought tradecraft and discipline. I want to say that again, tradecraft and discipline. Before that, they were dopers. You're going to go do a dope deal. You're going to buy 10 kilos of cocaine. Man, I'm an undercover narcotics agent in 04. You go do that, man, you're going to do a deal at 6. It goes at 10 o'clock or midnight, because you're on doper time, as we used to call it in the undercover world. Because they're just crooks. Everything is about, we'll get to it when we get to it. The Zetas were different. When the Zetas came in, you said you were going to be somewhere at 6 o'clock. They were there at 5 o'clock, ready and prepped and ready to go. These people were no joke. And with them, that's where all the discipline and the communications came in. That's where they went from open communications into encryption. That's where they went into inversion, because they knew comms were very, very important. Then they brought in the weaponry. Then they brought in their discipline. And then from that, train the trainer programs. So what happened in Mexico, and this was the big miss by the United States intelligence agencies, they were growing so rapidly that every other cartel began to fail, because they didn't have these enforcement wings that were this strong. And so it was two options. You either rose to the occasion, you created your own enforcement wings, or you fell. So how did the other cartels do that? Well, they began hiring the FARC. The FARC was, until recently, a designated by the United States State Department foreign terrorist organization. They began hiring Cabiles. Cabiles are Guatemalan special forces. We debriefed many of them who were helping CJNG, Sinaloans, and others for their training. So that level of training, then you had local, state, and federal law enforcement officers from all over coming in. And that's where their tradecraft really evolved from. So think of this for a second. We're talking about the cartels who are working and contracting with known terrorists, right? Because that's what the FARC were, guerrilla fighters, known drug traffickers, but also operators. And what that did is it changed the game when the enforcement wings now were forced to rise. So look at the Juarez cartel. They created La Línea. That's the line. The line was known as their enforcement wing. Look at Troops of Inferno. That became what the Zetas, when they broke away from the Gulf. That's what they started. Look at Los Anthrax. Los Anthrax was originally a cell to protect Del Mayo's children, and he was battling others. Now they rose in great strength as an enforcement wing. And the elite group, the Delta group within CJNG, and the list goes on. But this was the great failure by the U.S. intelligence agency. So now you have this capability. It's at a tremendous level. So when I tell you that these people aren't walking around with the Born to Lose tattoo stamped on their forehead, they are no joke. Now, also understand, though, I'm talking about the guys who are the pipe hitters, the old school guys. I'm not talking about these young kids that are on the front lines right now getting killed and whacked every night. I'm talking about people who for the last decade have survived these wars and are very connected with the Mexican government. They are an adversary that should be looked at in the way that they really are.
I mean, what you're describing is fascinating to one degree, but also terrifying to another.